Shedeur Sanders and Deshaun Watson were brought to Cleveland to fight for a single starting job. When two high-profile quarterbacks occupy the same huddle, division and locker room drama are almost guaranteed. Yet deep within the Browns facility, a radically different strategy is taking root. Rather than allowing a multi-million-dollar position battle to fracture the franchise, an unexpected pact has emerged. Sanders and Watson have quietly forged a shared, uncompromising oath of brotherhood off the field. By refusing to let personal ambitions sabotage their collective goal, they are turning a dangerous quarterback war into an unstoppable alliance. This dynamic runs completely counter to the media frenzy surrounding Berea. Ever since the Browns opened their off-season program, national talking heads and local beat reporters have salivated over the looming collision. The narrative was practically written for television. An expensive, embattled veteran trying to protect his remaining legacy against a young, polarizing second-year passer backed by one of the most passionate fan bases in football. Modern sports media thrives on friction, and a high-stakes quarterback competition in a pressure cooker market like Cleveland seemed destined to explode. Standard NFL history suggests that when two starters are placed in the same room, passive aggression, divided huddles, and whispers to the press inevitably follow. Instead, Sanders and Watson shattered that entire narrative before training camp pads were even strapped on. The turn began far away from the strict eye of the coaching staff, on the humid grass of Miami, Florida. Rather than retreating into their respective corners to train with private throw coaches in secret, both signal callers chose an unprecedented route. Together they organized a player-led off-site passing camp, inviting Cleveland's key offensive playmakers down to Florida to build chemistry, master route timings, and sharpen the playbook on their own dime. The roster of attendees in Miami signaled a major commitment to the offense. Proven wideouts like Jeudy and Cedric Tillman stood side by side on the line with explosive young additions like Isaiah Bond, KC Conception, and Denzel Boston. Crucially, they weren't running drills for one quarterback while the others sulked on the sideline. Sanders and Watson split reps evenly, orchestrating the workouts together, correcting route depths, and setting an environment of absolute cohesion. It was a public display of unity that sent a clear message back to Ohio. The locker room would not be divided, and the offense would not be dragged into a war of egos. When Sanders met with reporters shortly after returning north, he directly addressed the elephant in the room. Addressing the intense speculation surrounding his relationship with Watson, the young quarterback revealed a maturity that surprised many critics who expected a bitter rivalry. Sanders made it explicitly clear that their joint workouts in Miami were not for show, but rather a reflection of the genuine baseline respect that exists between them. He emphasized that both players share an identical mindset heading into the heat of training camp. They are both obsessively striving to become the absolute best versions of themselves to win games for Cleveland. According to Sanders, the relationship inside the quarterback room is built on constant, transparent dialogue rather than territorial silence. If Watson sees a mechanical tweak or a pre-snap read he likes from Sanders, he asks about it. If Sanders notices a subtle nuance in Watson's footwork or field vision, he doesn't hesitate to pick the veteran's brain. They leave emotions and external noise outside the building, choosing instead to focus entirely on daily incremental progress. They refuse to allow external media hype or fan speculation to poison their working relationship. This collaborative atmosphere provides head coach Todd Monken with an entirely unique setup as camp begins. Rather than managing a toxic rivalry, Monken inherits a functional, highly motivated quarterback unit that elevates every player on the roster. The trip to Miami laid down a foundation of trust that cannot be replicated during rigid, structured team practices. By taking control of the narrative before the first whistle blew, Shedeur Sanders and Deshaun Watson transformed what was supposed to be a destructive positional war into an unstoppable alliance. To fully comprehend why this sudden unity between Shedeur Sanders and Deshaun Watson feels so jarring, one has to look closely at the haunting history of the Cleveland Browns. Since the franchise returned to the NFL in 1999, 42 different starting quarterbacks have taken the field in Berea. It is a legendary, tragic carousel of failed high draft picks, ill-fated veteran trades, and mid-season injury replacements. For over a quarter century, the quarterback room in Cleveland has not been a sanctuary of brotherhood. It has been a graveyard of careers, defined by organizational paranoia, constant coaching turnover, and bitter internal politics. Whenever the Browns have found themselves facing a true quarterback competition in past years, the outcome was almost always toxic. In those historic battles, players inevitably split into camps. Broadcasters and beat writers dissected every throw, and the resulting friction spilled out into the huddle, tearing the rest of the roster apart. From high-profile draft busts who felt alienated by veterans to high-priced starters who viewed backups as existential threats, Cleveland's offense has repeatedly crumbled under the weight of mistrust. The fans, burned by decades of broken promises, learned to expect ego clashes and locker room drama as default settings. That dark historical backdrop is precisely why the present dynamic carries such heavy stakes. Deshaun Watson arrived in Cleveland under a massive contract and immense national scrutiny, fighting constantly to reclaim the elite game-changing form that defined his early career. On the other side stands Shedeur Sanders, a polarizing second-year talent with a passionate global following, fighting to prove he belongs at the helm of an NFL franchise for the next decade. On paper, these two athletes represent two completely different eras and ideologies. By all conventional NFL logic, placing them head-to-head in an open competition should have created the most explosive, divided quarterback war in modern franchise history. Yet both players seem keenly aware of the ghosts that haunt the building. They recognize that if they allow personal insecurity to dictate their behavior, they will simply become numbers 43 and 44 on an infamous list of failures. Watson understands that his legacy in this league hinges on elevating the environment around him, while Sanders knows that real maturity means learning from every available resource rather than waging a war of attrition. By actively choosing empathy and shared ambition over territorial pride, they are deliberately breaking a cycle that has paralyzed this organization for nearly 30 years. This collective mindset alters the entire emotional climate of the facility as training camp gets underway. Instead of watching two men eye each other with suspicion from across the meeting room, the rest of the team sees two competitors holding each other accountable to the highest standard. They are proving that a quarterback room does not have to be a battlefield of egos to foster fierce elite competition. In a city that has seen every conceivable iteration of quarterback collapse, this quiet covenant of respect stands out as an unprecedented turning point. Shedeur Sanders and Deshaun Watson aren't just competing for a starting job, they are actively dismantling decades of Cleveland football dysfunction. When head coach Todd Monken took charge of the Cleveland offense, he made his foundational philosophy clear from day one. Nothing would be handed out, and every single snap on the practice field had to be earned. Facing a high-profile decision at the most critical position on the roster, Monken resisted the temptation to name an early starter or establish a rigid hierarchy during spring minicamps. Instead, he designed an open, rigorous competition where Deshaun Watson and Shedeur Sanders would split first-team reps down the middle throughout the summer. Monken recognized that true evaluation couldn't happen in shorts and t-shirts. It required live-action situations, full pads, and high-pressure practice scenarios to uncover who truly gives the franchise its best chance to win. This open system created a crucible of daily accountability that forced both quarterbacks to elevate their game. During his rookie campaign, Sanders had shown flashes of brilliant off-script playmaking, but he was often hindered by holding onto the football too long, taking unnecessary sacks, and forcing late throws into tight coverage. Under Monken's tutelage, and through relentless summer work, the second-year passer made dramatic strides in his mental processing. Monken publicly commended Sanders for making quicker, more decisive reads, getting the ball out of his hands with urgency, and eliminating lost yardage plays that previously stalled drives. By learning to stack positive plays rather than chasing highlight reels on every down, Sanders closed the developmental gap much faster than outside observers anticipated. Simultaneously, the pressure of a rising young challenger pushed Watson to refine his own mechanics and re-establish his rhythm after lengthy injury rehabs. Entering the final year of his contract with immense motivation to prove his long-term viability, Watson responded to the split rep format by leaning heavily into his veteran experience and athletic instincts. Rather than viewing Sanders' rapid growth as a threat to his livelihood, Watson embraced the daily back and forth as a catalyst to sharpen his own game. The presence of two capable passers, demanding perfection from themselves, ensured that neither player could afford a single relaxed series or careless turnover. What transformed this intense positional battle from a nerve-wracking distraction into an offensive catalyst was the transparent, unfiltered feedback loop established between the two competitors. In typical NFL quarterback rooms locked in a tight race, players tend to hoard film insights and maintain a polite, distant silence. In Berea, Sanders and Watson actively stripped away that secrecy. Between practice periods and during film study, the two passers sat shoulder to shoulder, dissecting defensive coverages, comparing footwork techniques, and debating hot route adjustments. When Sanders spotted a subtle pre-snap read that Watson executed smoothly, he asked for a breakdown. When Watson noticed an angle or platform throw Sanders mastered, he sought his younger teammate's perspective. This unselfish dynamic created an atmosphere where constructive criticism replaced passive judgment. If a play went wrong during team drills, the quarterback returning to the sideline didn't walk alone to sit on a cooling bench. He was met by his fellow passer offering immediate, constructive feedback on what the safety did post-snap or where the blitz originated. By removing personal pride and defensive posturing from their daily interactions, Sanders and Watson turned every practice rep into a collective learning opportunity for the entire quarterback room. For Monken and the offensive staff, watching this iron sharpens iron method unfold proved invaluable. The coaching staff didn't have to spend precious energy managing fragile egos or refereeing petty disputes over field time. Instead, they were able to install an expansive, modern offense at an accelerated pace because both quarterbacks were fully invested in mastering the playbook together. The shared dialogue extended directly to the rest of the unit, as wideouts, tight ends, and offensive linemen saw their two leaders communicating seamlessly and demanding standard-setting execution from everyone on the field. Ultimately, Monken's blueprint succeeded not just because it tested physical execution under pressure, but because it cultivated an environment where competition built strength rather than fracture. By fostering mutual trust amidst an unforgiving position battle, Shedeur, Sanders, and Deshaun Watson demonstrated that personal growth and team success are inextricably linked. As the team moved closer to live preseason action, the Browns were no longer simply waiting to see who would win a depth chart spot. They were reaping the rewards of an offensive system forged through genuine, relentless collaboration. While national commentators remained fixated on predicting who would win the official starting nod, the broader threat posed by Cleveland's quarterback room was taking shape behind closed doors. In the high-octane modern NFL, a divided roster is often dead on arrival. When players sense a fracture at the most critical position, political factions inevitably form inside the locker room. Receivers subtly favor one signal caller's ball placement, offensive linemen take sides based on cadence preference, and the unit's collective trust erodes under the weight of locker room speculation. By presenting an unbreakable front, Shedeur, Sanders, and Deshaun Watson stripped that toxicity away completely. The ripple effects of their alliance reshaped the entire offensive ecosystem during summer preparations. Playmakers like Jeudy, Cedric Tillman, and explosive rookie additions Isaiah Bond and Denzel Boston no longer had to navigate the awkward dance of split loyalties because both quarterbacks alternated series seamlessly and backed each other's execution. The pass catchers focused purely on mastering Todd Monken's complex route trees rather than worrying about who was delivering the football. The huddle maintained a single, consistent standard of authority regardless of who stood behind center. That singular focus eliminated the hesitation that often plagues retooling offenses, allowing the Browns to execute with an aggressiveness that caught defensive coordinators around the league off guard. Beyond the mental buy-in, the tactical advantages of this unified room created a unique operational nightmare for opposing scouting departments. Under Monken's high-tempo scheme, having two distinct yet fully supportive quarterbacks forces defenses to prepare for two completely different playmaking profiles without enjoying the luxury of an offensive identity drop. Watson brings veteran diagnostic ability, high-level pre-snap adjustments, and proven mobility out of structure. Sanders counters with quick-trigger decisiveness, calm pocket navigation under pressure, and lethal downfield accuracy on extended plays. Because both players operate out of the exact same playbook with identical route concepts, Cleveland can adjust its offensive emphasis week to week without sacrificing continuity or telegraphing play calls. Furthermore, this genuine partnership permanently solves the dreaded backup quarterback dilemma that routinely destroys playoff contenders. In most NFL buildings, the line between starter and reserve is fraught with insecurity, leaving the second stringer isolated and underprepared. In Berea, if Watson commands the field, Sanders sits on the sideline as a hyper-engaged, highly capable backup who understands every read and keeps his mind sharp for any moment his number is called. If Sanders claims the starting job, Watson provides an invaluable sounding board, a veteran eyes-in-the-sky resource who can decode complex coverages in real time between series. The team secured elite quarterback depth, rooted in active collaboration rather than latent resentment. As news of their shared workouts and collaborative film sessions filtered across the league, rival front offices took notice of a developing contender. What was universally projected as Cleveland's biggest vulnerability heading into the season had suddenly morphed into its greatest strength. The Browns were no longer a soap opera waiting for an inevitable internal combustion. Instead, they had built a multi-dimensional passing attack fueled by two motivated signal callers who recognized that their individual success was magnified by collective strength. By turning an explosive position battle into a functional alliance, Sanders and Watson effectively neutralized the media pressure designed to tear them apart. They proved that when ego is removed from the equation, high-stakes competition doesn't fracture a team, it sharpens it into a weapon. As the regular season approached, the rest of the AFC North was forced to confront a dangerous new reality. The Cleveland Browns weren't just bringing a capable starter to the field, they were unleashing an unstoppable quarterback room built to withstand the relentless grind of NFL football. As training camp transitions into live preseason action, the defining narrative in Berea is no longer about who will walk away with the starting job. Head coach Todd Monken's open competition forced both Shedeur Sanders and Deshaun Watson to reach new heights, giving Cleveland two viable, highly capable starters ready to run the offense. Yet the ultimate revelation of the summer is that the identity of the starter matters far less than the unbreakable foundation built between the two men vying for the role. In an NFL culture that routinely encourages internal drama and fractured huddles, Sanders and Watson chose a completely different path. They refused to let external speculation, multi-million-dollar stakes, or personal ambition dismantle their shared vision. By establishing total alignment early on, from player-led sessions in Miami to shared film analysis in Berea, they turned what was predicted to be a destructive quarterback war into a stabilizing force for the entire organization. Whichever passer Monken ultimately sends onto the field for Week 1 will step into the huddle backed by complete team buy-in and zero political friction. On the sideline, the secondary quarterback won't sit as a disgruntled competitor waiting for failure, but as a fully engaged partner invested in every drive. By choosing mutual respect over ego, Shedeur Sanders and Deshaun Watson haven't just rewritten the story of a high-stakes position battle, they have forged an unstoppable alliance that promises to redefine Cleveland football for years to come.